The night sky, as usual, was filled with a blanket of stars, twinkling faintly in the distance. But something was different this time, something no one could see, but everyone would soon feel. A quiet, almost imperceptible shift stirred the air, unnoticed by the bustling world below. In a fraction of a second, everything around us seemed to tremble, just a hint, as if space itself was holding its breath. The people on Earth were unaware, still going about their daily lives, but the universe had begun its slow dance, drawing two worlds closer than ever before. A massive spacecraft, invisible to the human eye, cut silently through the vast expanse of space. It moved at a speed unknown to us, crossing light years in mere moments. Its arrival was not marked by any explosion nor any sound. Instead, it was the stillness that filled the atmosphere, a subtle yet undeniable change that no one could explain. The moment it breached Earth's atmosphere, everything changed, though no one noticed at first. Trees swayed without wind, and clouds shifted in strange patterns, as if the sky itself had become sentient. But the world continued on, oblivious to the quiet invasion taking place. Somewhere, high above the rooftops, a child stared up at the sky, its eyes wide with wonder. For a brief moment, the stars seemed to shimmer a little brighter, as though inviting the child into a secret they weren't yet old enough to understand. Then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the strange presence vanished. But it left behind a feeling, a tinge of something extraordinary, lingering in the air. It was a sensation that could not be shaken, a realization that something unimaginable had just occurred. And yet, no one spoke of it. Not yet, but something had begun, something that would change everything. As the night deepened, the world seemed to hold its breath. The child, still standing on the rooftop, could feel it. An energy in the air, something electric, something that wasn't there before. It wasn't just the stars twinkling more brightly. It was the very fabric of reality that seemed to have shifted, if only slightly. At the same time, across the globe, others felt it too, in different ways. A person in a crowded city paused in the middle of the street, a strange sensation crawling up their spine. A farmer in a quiet countryside looked at the sky, sensing a change, though he could not name it. It was as if the whole world had been touched by something invisible, something beyond their understanding. The morning came, and the sun rose as it always did, casting its warm light over the earth. But for some, it wasn't just another day. There was an unspoken awareness among them, a shared feeling that something, someone, was watching, waiting. Over the next few days, the world remained unaware of the quiet anomaly that had passed through their skies. Life continued, as it always did, but there were moments, fleeting and inexplicable, when things just didn't feel the same. At night, the stars appeared to form new patterns, shapes that seemed too precise to be a coincidence. People noticed, but most dismissed it as a trick of the mind. But for those attuned to the pulse of the universe, something was unmistakable, the feeling of being observed. It wasn't long before small things began to happen. A young artist's brushstrokes began to flow more easily. A scientist's mind suddenly unlocked a new theory, and a musician created a melody that had never been heard before. These bursts of creativity were not ordinary. They were inspired, as if guided by an unseen hand. Meanwhile, high above Earth, the silent ship remained in orbit, hidden within the folds of space. Its passengers, beings not quite human, yet not entirely alien either, watched with quiet interest, observing the people of Earth and their strange, unpredictable reactions. They had come not to invade, but to understand, to see if humanity was ready for the knowledge they carried. The beings had seen civilizations rise and fall, but Earth was different. They were drawn to it, to us, because here was something they had never encountered before: potential. Yet, despite their silent observation, the beings knew they could not stay hidden for long. Earth was a delicate world, and its inhabitants would need time to comprehend what was coming. The first contact had already been made, though neither side knew the full extent of it yet. One evening, as the sun set over the horizon, the world again felt it, a subtle, almost imperceptible pulse, like the beating of a heart. The beings were ready to make their presence known, but this time, the Earth would have to be prepared to listen. The silence was about to break. As the days passed, the pulse in the air grew stronger, more palpable. People started to feel a shift in the energy around them. Some dismissed it as a figment of their imagination, but for others, it was as real as the breath they took. They could sense that something was about to change, something profound and irreversible. Late one night, as the moon hung low in the sky, a soft glow appeared above the horizon, faint but unmistakable. It started as a single beam of light, cutting through the night like a searchlight from the heavens. It was not like any earthly phenomenon, no aircraft, no comet, no meteor. It was something else, something far beyond their comprehension. In cities and small towns alike, people stopped and stared up at the sky. The glow seemed to grow, expanding across the sky in perfect harmony. It was as though the stars themselves were rearranging, forming patterns that were too deliberate to be natural. For the first time in centuries, humanity collectively held its breath, as if waiting for something, something they could not explain. At the same time, in the shadows of the world's most secretive scientific facilities, a few minds recognized the significance. Instruments designed to study the universe began to react in strange ways. The very frequencies of the Earth seemed to tremble. Signals from deep space that had never been understood started to come into focus. The glow in the sky grew brighter, pulsating like a heartbeat, and then, suddenly it was gone, leaving the night still once more. But something had changed. A sense of anticipation lingered in the air, hanging like a thread, pulling at the edges of human consciousness. No one knew exactly what had happened, but they knew it meant something. The next day, strange things began happening all over the world. In the farthest corners of the earth, people began to experience vivid dreams, dreams of distant planets, strange landscapes, and civilizations far older than their own. These dreams were not just figments of imagination. They felt real, as though they had traveled through space and time. When they awoke, they felt a deep sense of wonder, as if they had been touched by something far beyond their understanding. Across the globe, small but undeniable signs of change started to appear. Seeds that were planted weeks ago began to sprout unusually fast, growing into vibrant, almost otherworldly plants. Animals acted in ways that were inexplicable, showing signs of intelligence that hadn't been observed before. People began to find themselves more connected to the world around them, sensing things they couldn't quite explain. It was clear now, something or someone was preparing to reveal itself to Earth. The glow in the sky, the strange dreams, the sudden surge of life, it was all connected. And as the days stretched on, humanity began to wonder, were they truly ready for what was to come? But what could they do? The world was unprepared, unknowing, yet somehow the feeling of unity, the sense of awe began to spread. It was as if Earth itself was awakening, and in doing so, it was calling for its people to awaken too. One evening, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, the glow returned, stronger this time. And this time, it didn't just light up the sky. It seemed to reach down, stretching toward Earth with the promise of something vast and monumental. The beings from beyond the stars were not just watching anymore. They were ready to make their presence known, and Earth was about to meet them in the most unexpected way. As the glow descended, it wrapped around the planet like a soft embrace, bathing the Earth in an otherworldly light. People stood frozen, unable to look away, as if caught in a trance, sensing the magnitude of the moment, but unsure how to interpret it. The world felt alive in a way it never had before, as though every living thing, every blade of grass, every drop of water was connected by an invisible thread. And then, without warning, the light fractured into millions of shimmering particles, each one pulsing with energy. It was like the stars themselves were coming to Earth, not as distant dots of light, but as tangible, living fragments. The particles swirled and danced, weaving around each other in intricate patterns, drawing closer to the ground. People gasped as the particles began to settle, forming shapes, unfamiliar shapes, both geometric and organic, like nothing human eyes had ever seen. It wasn't just light, it was matter, forming and shifting before them, as if something ancient and powerful was taking form right in front of them. In cities around the world, people began to gather in awe, looking up, but no one dared to speak. The silence that enveloped them was profound, broken only by the soft hum of the glowing energy. It felt like the Earth itself was holding its breath, waiting for what would happen next. Then, from within the light, figures began to emerge, beings of light and energy, with forms that shifted and pulsed in harmony with the universe. They were not made of flesh, not of bone, but of something far more ancient, more fundamental. They moved gracefully, effortlessly, their presence emanating peace and wisdom. The crowd below, though unsure, felt no fear. There was something in their presence that reassured them, an understanding that transcended words, a knowing that these beings meant no harm. They were here not to conquer, but to share knowledge, wisdom, a connection. One of the beings slowly extended its form towards the earth, and as it did, the energy around it intensified, glowing brighter. People felt warmth, not from the light, but from the deep ancient knowledge that seemed to pour into their minds. The connection was instantaneous, like a floodgate opening, pouring an understanding of the universe, of existence itself, into the hearts of humanity. And in that instant, it became clear. They weren't just visitors, they were guides. They had come to show humanity something greater, to open the door to the vast, interconnected cosmos that lay beyond the stars. Earth, with all its potential, was ready to take its place among the stars. The beings of light whispered, not in words, but through the shared consciousness they had created. We are not here to teach you. We are here to remind you. You are not alone. You never were. The message resonated deeply within every heart, like a gentle yet undeniable truth awakening from the depths of the soul. It wasn't just a declaration, it was a revelation, one that echoed through every living being on earth. The boundaries of individuality, once so clear, blurred in the face of this new, shared understanding. The invisible thread that connected all of existence seemed to stretch out, weaving humanity together, not just with each other, but with the very cosmos itself. For the first time, the people of Earth understood that they were not separate, isolated entities. They were part of something vast, something ancient, something eternal. The stars above weren't distant objects to be studied from afar. They were friends, guides, parts of the same living system that humans were a part of. The beings made of pure energy and light continued their silent communication, sending waves of knowledge that vibrated through the collective consciousness of Earth. The sky, once filled with the solitary dance of stars, now seemed to pulse in rhythm with the heartbeat of Earth. The cities grew still, the sounds of the world quieting down, as if everything, every living creature, was holding its breath in this sacred moment of connection. The beings of light shared visions of distant galaxies, of civilizations that had long since passed, and others that flourished, existing in harmony with the forces of the universe. Each one had its own unique path, but all were bound by the same truth, that life, in all its forms, was interconnected. As the moments stretched on, the people of Earth began to feel a sense of deep unity. Disputes, fears, and divisions that once seemed so significant now appeared trivial, fading in the face of the overwhelming understanding that there was more to existence than could ever be grasped in a single lifetime. The boundaries between nations, cultures, and people melted away, replaced by a profound sense of shared purpose. One of the beings gently approached a small group standing below, their glowing form radiating calm and warmth. As it did, a wave of compassion spread across the crowd, touching each individual. They were not afraid. In fact, they felt a deep trust, as though they were in the presence of something ancient yet benevolent. The beings spoke, but not in words. Their message was carried in waves of emotion, in feelings of love and empathy that transcended language. You have always been a part of the cosmos, they conveyed, and now it is time for you to remember your place within it. Your journey is just beginning. With that, the beings began to slowly dissolve into the light, leaving behind a single shimmering trace in the sky. The glow began to fade, but the sense of connection lingered, hanging in the air like a soft echo of the infinite. And in that moment, humanity knew. The journey to the stars was no longer a distant dream. It was real, and it was theirs to take, together. As the light of the beings faded into the vastness of the cosmos, Earth was left in a serene silence, but the world had irrevocably changed. People stood still, absorbing the weight of the shared experience, each of them carrying a piece of the universal knowledge that had been gifted to them. The glow in the sky had disappeared, but the connection it had forged remained. It was as if the very air they breathed now carried the echo of the stars. For the first time, the people of Earth truly understood what it meant to be a part of the cosmos. They were not just travelers on a small, fragile planet, but explorers of an interconnected, boundless universe, one that was rich with life, knowledge, and infinite possibilities. The lessons of the beings from beyond the stars had awakened something within them, an ancient, dormant part of humanity that had long been forgotten. Nations began to set aside their differences, drawn together by a shared understanding that no single group could ever achieve the future alone. The walls between cultures, ideologies, and belief systems began to crumble, replaced by a global sense of unity. People started to look at each other differently, seeing not strangers, but fellow travelers on a grand, cosmic journey. Children, who had once only looked up at the stars in wonder, now felt a deep, innate connection to them. Their imaginations soared with new possibilities, filled with visions of distant worlds and futures where humanity could thrive beyond the confines of Earth. The dream of space exploration, once the stuff of science fiction, became something achievable, something tangible. Scientists, inspired by the newfound knowledge, began to unlock mysteries they had once thought unsolvable. New technologies, new ways of thinking, and new methods of cooperation began to emerge. The energy of the collective consciousness seemed to propel humanity forward, pushing the limits of what was possible. And yet, the most profound change was not in the scientific advancements, nor the physical explorations that would follow. It was in the hearts of the people. They had learned something far more important than how to reach the stars. They had learned that the greatest journey was not through space, but inward, toward understanding, compassion, and unity. With the being's departure, a new chapter began. Humanity had been shown the way, and now it was their turn to walk the path. The stars, once distant and cold, now felt like old friends waiting to be discovered, not as a place to conquer, but as a place to learn, to grow, and to connect. The journey to the stars had begun, not as a race for dominance, but as a shared mission of discovery and unity. And the universe, vast and endless, was waiting. As the days passed, the Earth continued to pulse with an energy it had never known before. People everywhere began to act with a sense of purpose, no longer burdened by the trivialities that had once dominated their lives. There was a quiet understanding that time had shifted, that humanity was now on the cusp of something extraordinary. Nations began to unite in ways never seen before. Borders became less important as the collective vision turned outward toward the stars. Scientists, engineers, and visionaries collaborated across continents, sharing knowledge and ideas at a pace that was almost unprecedented. The dream of a united interstellar future no longer seemed like a distant fantasy. It was becoming a reality. In classrooms, children were taught not just about the Earth, but about the universe in ways that made the stars feel like neighbors, not distant points of light. The mysteries of the cosmos were now within reach, and every child could feel it. A new sense of wonder had been awakened. They no longer looked up in awe with a sense of distance. Instead, they looked up with the belief that one day they too could reach the stars. A new generation of explorers emerged, motivated not by fame or fortune, but by the thirst for knowledge and the desire to contribute to something greater than themselves. Space agencies and private companies worked together, launching missions to the farthest corners of the solar system. New technologies emerged, driven by the wisdom shared by the beings from beyond the stars. Energy sources that had once seemed impossible were now a reality, and the Earth began to heal from the damage of centuries of neglect. But perhaps the most profound change wasn't in the physical world, it was in the hearts of people. Fear, once a driving force in the world, began to fade. The divisions between people, racial, cultural, political, lost their power. Humanity had seen a glimpse of something much larger than itself, and in that moment, old animosities seemed insignificant. In the quiet moments, as people looked up at the night sky, they no longer felt alone. They felt connected to each other, to the universe, and to the beings that had visited them. The stars were no longer cold, distant objects. They were alive with possibilities, with a promise of new discoveries, new relationships, and new ways of being. And though the beings from beyond the stars had departed, their presence lingered in every corner of human consciousness. They had not come to change the Earth, but to awaken its inhabitants to their true potential. The journey, it seemed, had only just begun. The newfound sense of unity spread like wildfire across the globe. People no longer saw the world in isolated fragments, but as an interconnected whole, each nation, each individual, a vital part of the greater cosmic story. The energy that had once felt distant and otherworldly now seemed to pulse through every human interaction, guiding them toward compassion, understanding, and shared purpose. Across the planet, new alliances were forged, not out of necessity, but out of a collective desire to explore the mysteries of the universe together. The barriers that had once divided humanity, fear, greed, misunderstanding, began to dissolve. Nations, once separated by their differences, now worked side by side in harmony, pooling their resources and knowledge to make the dream of space exploration a reality. The first steps toward interstellar travel were small, but they marked the beginning of an era unlike any before. Satellites and probes, designed with the collective wisdom of Earth's brightest minds, began to chart the deep, uncharted expanses of space. Humanity's reach began to extend beyond its home planet, not with the arrogance of conquerors, but with the humility of those who sought to understand, to learn, to grow. Meanwhile, a quiet revolution took place on Earth. As the pursuit of knowledge took precedence, the old systems of power began to shift. Leaders who once held sway through force and manipulation now found themselves replaced by those who inspired collaboration and innovation. Governments worked together, not to amass power, but to elevate humanity as a whole. The world's resources, once hoarded by the few, were now shared in ways that benefited all. As the first human settlements on the moon were established and missions to Mars became a reality, humanity stood on the precipice of something monumental. The stars, once seen as an unreachable dream, were now the new frontier, one that would require cooperation, understanding, and an unwavering commitment to peace. And yet, in the midst of this outward journey, people found themselves looking inward as well. The quiet wisdom shared by the beings from beyond the stars had taught them that true exploration began not in space, but in the heart. The universe, vast as it was, held no greater mystery than the connections that bound humanity together. In the wake of their visit, people realized that the journey of discovery was not simply about reaching the stars. It was about discovering the limitless potential within themselves and each other. The question was no longer whether humanity could reach the stars. The question was, how far could they go, and how much of the universe could they truly understand if they did it together? The stars were waiting, but now Earth, united in purpose and spirit, was ready to answer the call. As the years passed, the bond between humanity and the cosmos deepened. People on Earth were no longer just dreaming about the stars. They were living with them, studying them, and reaching out to them. The interstellar missions grew bolder, exploring distant moons and asteroids, while space stations orbiting the Earth became hubs of international collaboration. There was a quiet, palpable sense that humanity was on the verge of becoming more than just a planet-bound species. It was becoming a spacefaring civilization. On Earth, the impact was equally profound. Schools taught not only history and science, but also the interconnectedness of all life, both on Earth and across the universe. Children no longer viewed space exploration as a distant dream for the future, but as an inevitable part of their lives. The possibility of visiting other planets, meeting other civilizations, and discovering unknown forms of life had become real, not abstract. The whole world was focused on expanding their horizons, physically, intellectually, and spiritually. Nations began to pool their resources, building megacities that stretched into the sky, powered by sustainable energy sources derived from the lessons learned in space. The Earth, once on the brink of environmental collapse, started to heal. Innovations in renewable energy, agriculture, and medicine spread rapidly across the globe, fueled by the knowledge gleaned from space exploration. Technology that had once seemed impossible was now an everyday part of life. And yet, despite all the outward progress, it was the internal transformation that held the most significance. People were no longer driven by fear of the unknown, but by a sense of wonder and curiosity. They looked to the stars not as a challenge to conquer, but as a vast expanse to learn from. The divisions that once defined humanity, race, religion, culture, began to fade into the background, replaced by a shared identity as inhabitants of a single, interconnected world. The beings from beyond the stars had never told humanity what to do. They had never imposed their will. Instead, they had shown humanity a reflection of its own potential, one that was far greater than anyone could have imagined. Their message had been clear. The universe was not just a place to explore, but a living entity to be respected and understood. Now, as Earth looked up toward the stars, humanity was no longer the same species that had once been driven by fear, division, and scarcity. It was a species united by the desire to learn, to grow, and to contribute to the vast tapestry of life that stretched across the cosmos. And as humanity stepped forward into this new era, it carried with it the knowledge that the universe was not only a place to discover, but a place where the answers to the deepest questions of existence awaited. The beings may have left, but their legacy lived on in every human heart. The journey had only just begun. As the first human settlements began to take root on the moon, Mars, and beyond, humanity's vision shifted from mere survival to flourishing in the cosmos. The stars, once distant and cold, were now beacons of opportunity, guiding humanity's expansion into new frontiers. These settlements, though small at first, were the seed of something much greater, a vast network of communities stretching across the solar system. Each new colony was an opportunity not only for exploration, but for the application of Earth's new wisdom, the power of unity, sustainability, and shared knowledge. Back on Earth, the spirit of exploration transformed every facet of life. The global economy became increasingly interwoven, no longer defined by national borders, but by humanity's shared goals and needs. Advances in communication technology, accelerated by space research, brought people closer together, even as they reached further apart. The global community was bound by a common purpose: to create a future where the stars were within reach for all, not just the privileged few. Education was redefined. Young minds were taught the skills necessary not just to live on Earth, but to thrive in space. As students grew up, they understood the importance of exploration, of contributing to a larger purpose. The curriculum was as much about space physics as it was about empathy, compassion, and cooperation. No longer was the goal simply to advance science or technology. It was to build a future in which the collective good of humanity was at the heart of every discovery and innovation. The space stations orbiting Earth became a hub for scientific collaboration. Researchers from all over the world worked side by side, studying the Earth, the cosmos, and everything in between. They developed new technologies to support life in space, life support systems, sustainable farming methods, and advanced propulsion systems that would one day make interstellar travel a reality. But they also studied the fragility of Earth itself, learning to preserve and protect their home planet while they expanded into the stars. As humanity ventured further into the cosmos, the realization grew that the journey was not just about expanding the human race, but about understanding the nature of existence itself. The more they explored, the more questions arose. Questions that reached beyond science, touching on philosophy, spirituality, and the deepest corners of human consciousness. The beings from beyond the stars had left behind more than just knowledge. They had left a legacy of self-discovery, a reminder that the greatest discoveries were often those that lay within. At the edge of the solar system, unmanned probes sent back images of distant worlds, bringing back signs of potential life, perhaps not like anything humans had imagined, but life nonetheless. The quest for knowledge seemed endless, and yet with each discovery, humanity's understanding of its place in the universe deepened, and as the Earth looked out toward the infinite expanse, the stars no longer felt so far away. They were not just destinations, they were friends, waiting to share their wisdom with a species that had finally begun to understand that the journey of discovery was infinite. The cosmic legacy was not one of domination, but of coexistence and shared growth, a journey that would continue for generations, for millennia, and perhaps forever. As humanity reached out further into the cosmos, a new understanding began to take root across the entire human race. The pursuit of knowledge is a never-ending journey. The more we discover, the more we realize how vast and interconnected the universe truly is. The stars no longer seemed like distant points of light, but active participants in humanity's grand story. A story where every step forward was shared not just with each other, but with every living thing across the universe. The first interstellar probes began their journey beyond the edges of the solar system, aiming to unlock the secrets of distant stars and planets. The people of Earth, united by the desire to learn and grow, watched as their civilization took its first steps into interstellar space. The technology that had once been science fiction was now being used to bridge the gap between Earth and the stars. Humanity's thirst for discovery was limitless, and with each new breakthrough, the horizon expanded further. Back on Earth, these advancements had profound effects on society. The world's energy systems were revolutionized, powered by sustainable methods learned from space technologies. Clean energy sources from the far reaches of the solar system began to flow into Earth's grids, healing the planet and ensuring that future generations could thrive. The environmental damage caused by centuries of exploitation began to reverse, thanks to the lessons learned in space exploration. And as humanity looked outward, they began to look inward, too. People no longer measured success by material wealth or power, but by their contributions to the collective journey. Human beings understood their role not as rulers of the earth, but as caretakers of both the planet and the cosmos. The pursuit of knowledge, empathy, and understanding became the core values driving all decisions. The mission was clear: to explore the stars, and in doing so, to unlock the true potential of humanity. The future was bright with endless possibilities, and every new discovery was a reminder that humanity was just getting started. Now, if you've been inspired by this story of unity and discovery, join us on this incredible journey. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories, updates, and insights on space exploration and humanity's future in the stars. Like and share this video with friends and family, so we can continue to spread the excitement and wonder of what's possible when we come together. Let's inspire the next generation of dreamers, thinkers, and explorers, because the adventure is just beginning.